Flu season came early this year. That's according to the CDC. The agency says the flu season has seen its earliest start in 10 years. A strain of the flu that is particularly tough on kids is showing up early, too, for the first time in 27 years. Health officials say there's significant flu activity in all but a dozen states, and it's hitting the South the hardest. Experts say the early flu season is even perhaps more reason to get a flu shot.
So yeah, flu season is upon us, and it came early this year. And here's a map from the CDC, and it kind of gives you the determination of the activity going on in the different states. And we can see that certain states have widespread influenza activity already, including Massachusetts and South Carolina, Alabama, Louisiana, California, and Nevada all have widespread flu activity as of the end of November-ish, middle of November. And this was an interesting survey that came out by the medical waste company Stericycle. And they did this survey concerning flu and how people felt about the flu shot, etc. Let's take a look at what they said. Well, they determined that the majority of Americans are concerned about getting the flu. And the question was, do you worry about catching the flu? And 58% of people said yes. 39% no, which is odd to me because that's even if it's not a life-threatening thing, it can wipe you out for days and days. So it's really a miserable situation. They determined also that most Americans have gotten or plan on getting a flu shot. And 61% say they have already got the flu shot or they plan on getting it. And a full 1/3 of the population that was surveyed in this questionnaire said they won't get the shot. And the percentage of Americans who have gotten flu recently is pretty small. And they're saying, in the last year, have you contracted the flu? And 86% of people said no, they haven't. So very small percentage of people actually did. And the flu symptoms are the principal reason why Americans want to avoid it. And this is what I was really saying, because it is really a full-blown flu infection is a very miserable situation, and that can last for days and days. What concerns you most about getting the flu? 1/3 of people said feeling sick. Almost another third said giving it to a child or somebody who is vulnerable. Good reason. And 8% say death is the reason. The main reason Americans don't get a flu shot is doubt about its effectiveness. And it says, why are you choosing not to get a flu shot this year? And almost 7 out of 10 people said they don't believe it will prevent the flu. Now, the flu shot has shown varying effectiveness over the years. But even if it isn't fully protective, it's typically going to be able to protect you from getting a very, very severe influenza infection. So I found this a little odd that 9% of people won't get it because they fear needles. And most people are going to get their flu shot in a doctor's office, some at a pharmacy, some at work. And lastly, most Americans do recognize the importance of hand washing in keeping the flu from spreading. And they actually rank washing your hands with soap and water higher than getting the flu shot in preventing the spread of flu. And then there's this article out of 10 News, I believe that's up in Tennessee, and they say people 65 and older are most vulnerable to flu. So they acknowledge here that the flu season is here, and they said there are flu shots that are specifically targeted to people 65 and older. According to the CDC, about 70 to 80% of seasonal flu cases in this age group results in death. The really serious adverse aspects of influenza disproportionately affect the older age group. There's more pneumonia, more hospital visits, and of course more deaths, according to Dr. William Schaefer, an infectious disease specialist at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. He said, taking the proper steps to get ahead of the illness is paramount if you are over the age of 65. Quote, the first is a high-dose vaccine. You get 4 times as much vaccine. There's another something in it that we call an adjuvant, which is an immune booster. Both of these stimulate the immune system. The response in older people does better than in the standard vaccine, according to Dr. Schaefer. Schaefer also said that pregnant women are just as much risk as those at 65 and older. And he goes on to say, women who are pregnant who get the flu have complications that are comparable to what the seniors experience. Some of the protection that the mom develops goes across the placenta into that newborn and protects that baby during the first 6 months of its life. So, again, he says something pretty important here, too. He says, all of our crystal balls are cloudy about what the flu will do because it's so fickle. And that really kind of goes back to the flu shot. When the flu shots are prepared, it does take some time, and then during that time, flu is something that develops and changes over time pretty rapidly. So it mutates, and sometimes that explains the lower effectiveness of a flu shot in certain years. And then they had this other interesting survey out of YouGov. And it says that parents of minors are especially likely to believe misconceptions about the flu vaccine. And it says about a third of American parents, 32%, who have children under 18 years old believe that the flu vaccine itself can cause the illness. But of course, we know that's not true. And the CDC has debunked many of these misconceptions on their website. And we'll go over that momentarily. But approximately 3 in 10 parents with children under 18 responded in the affirmative to the statement, it's healthier to gain immunity from catching the flu virus rather than from the vaccine. In contrast, about 2 in 10 U.S. adults, or 23%, and non-parents, 21%, said the same thing. And there's 32% of parents who have children under 18 who believe the flu vaccine can cause flu. By contrast, 25% of non-parents said the same thing. And about a quarter of U.S. adults believe that pregnant women should not get the flu vaccine, though studies indicate that it helps to protect pregnant women and their children from the flu for several months after birth. So that's a pretty interesting thing coming out of YouGov. And as I mentioned, that the CDC does take efforts trying to squash the misconceptions about the flu vaccine and the seasonal flu. And they answer these different questions on their website. Can a flu vaccine give you the flu? And of course, the answer is no. Are there any available flu vaccines recommended over the others? And they do give the different types of vaccines available. And so on and so forth. So that is available, and I can link to that down below if you want to check out what the CDC has to say about these misconceptions. And the last thing I want to talk about is this report out of Harvard Medical School, and just another reason to consider getting the flu shot, other than the fact that it'll prevent you from getting the flu, lessen the symptoms, and in some cases prevent you from dying. And it says here, need another reason to get your annual flu shot? It could protect you from a fatal heart attack or stroke if you suffer from high blood pressure, according to research presented at the 2019 Joint Conference of the European Society of Cardiology Congress and the World Congress of Cardiology. Previous research has found that the inflammation from a flu infection can trigger a heart attack or stroke, and people with high blood pressure are especially at risk. This study used Danish medical records to identify approximately more than 600,000 people aged 18 to 100 with high blood pressure during 9 consecutive flu seasons. The researchers determined how many had received a flu vaccine each of those years. Then they followed the people over the flu season and tracked them how many died overall from cardiovascular causes, and specifically from heart attacks or strokes. Then they looked at the association between getting a vaccine and the risk of dying from cardiovascular disease during the subsequent flu season. The findings were the researchers found that compared with people who skipped the shot, those who got the flu vaccine were 16% less likely to die that season from a cardiovascular cause, and 10% were less likely to die from heart attack or stroke. So very important stuff there from European researchers with the Cardiology Congress. And this report, of course, comes from Harvard Medical School. Anyway, it's flu season. It's here early. We're getting the warnings. If you're pregnant, you should have your flu shot. If you're 65 or older, they have these extra high dose flu shots that you can get. And if you're just the normal person and not in any of those high risk groups, you still should get your flu shot. Right? You should get your flu shot. Anyway, I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this. And please comment below. Please share it with your friends. Right? Subscribe to the channel. And have a great Thanksgiving.